The evening train rattled across the rain-soaked rails of Portland, Oregon, when Ethan Miller stepped into the crowded car. He wore a plain flannel shirt, jeans, and an old backpack, anything to hide the truth that he was the son of one of the wealthiest men in the state. Ethan wasn't there to be recognized. He was there to feel real life, the kind that smelled of coffee, rust, and rain. He found an empty seat near the window and stared out, watching the city lights blur like melting stars. For once, he wasn't Ethan Miller, the heir to Miller Construction. He was just another face in the crowd. But fate, that strange, invisible thing, had other plans. As the train slowed near Maplewood Junction, a soft voice broke through the usual noise of vendors and announcements. "Please, something to eat." Ethan turned and for a second forgot how to breathe. A young woman stood there, maybe 21, holding a worn paper cup. Her clothes were threadbare, her shoes damp, but her eyes, gray with a hint of blue, held the kind of dignity that didn't belong to her circumstances. Without thinking, Ethan reached into his pocket and handed her $20. She hesitated, eyes widening. "Sir, are you sure?" He smiled gently. "Yeah, take it. Get something warm." She nodded, murmured a soft "thank you," and turned away. But something about her lingered, like a song that refused to fade. When she moved to the next car, Ethan couldn't stop watching her until she disappeared behind the door. That night, he couldn't sleep. He replayed her face over and over again, as if those few seconds had changed something in him. The next morning, he told himself it was just curiosity. But by the third night, when he found himself on the same train again, waiting, hoping he knew it wasn't. For days he searched. Same train, same route, same empty seat by the window. Sometimes he'd spot a flicker of movement that looked like her, only for disappointment to settle back in. Then one gray afternoon, he saw her again. Her name, he would soon learn, was Lily Brooks. This time he stood up before she could walk past. "Wait," he said, his voice breaking a little. She froze. Ethan pulled out his wallet, not knowing what else to do, and handed her a roll of bills, $10,000. Her eyes went wide in disbelief. "This must be a mistake." He shook his head. "No mistake. It's for you." She looked at him as if trying to read his soul. Then without another word, she tucked the money away and walked toward the next car. Ethan's heart sank. He hadn't wanted her to take it and disappear. He just wanted her to see him. That night, as rain pattered against his apartment window, Ethan realized what he'd done. He didn't want to buy kindness. He wanted to understand her world, the one no luxury car or private jet could ever take him to. The next day he returned again and again. Every evening he rode the same train, watching, waiting. His friends thought he was losing it. "You're chasing a girl who begs for a living," one of them said, laughing. But Ethan didn't care. He couldn't explain the ache that followed him everywhere since that day. Then one evening, just when he had started to lose hope, she appeared again. Lily. Same soft eyes, same quiet strength. But this time, when their gazes met, she didn't even pause. She just walked by, as if he were invisible. Ethan followed her off the train, keeping his distance, as she made her way through the station, past the crowds and out into the dark. The city lights faded behind them as she walked down a dirt path that led toward Maplewood's poorer side. When she reached a tiny shack with a roof patched from old tin, she went inside. Ethan hid behind a tree, guilt mixing with curiosity. Through the small window, he saw her kneel beside a man in a wheelchair, her father, and hand him the money. "Dad, I got enough tonight." "You'll get your medicine tomorrow," she said softly. The man smiled weakly and placed his trembling hand on her head. Two little kids ran in from outside barefoot and laughing, and Lily scooped them into her arms. Ethan stood frozen. This wasn't pity anymore, it was admiration. The kind that stripped you bare and made you question everything you'd ever valued. When she stepped out later to feed their old cow, Ethan followed quietly. But she sensed him and turned sharply. "You, why are you here?" Her voice trembled, half fear, half anger. "I just wanted to talk," he said. "Please don't be afraid." She frowned. "If you came for your money, it's gone. My father needed medicine, but I'll work and return it someday, I promise." Ethan's heart twisted. "No, Lily, I didn't come for that. I came because I can't stop thinking about you." She blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "You're joking. People like you don't talk to people like me." He shook his head. "You're wrong. You have something I've never had: courage. I don't even know how to live the way you do." Lily looked down, her lips trembling. Before she could reply, the door behind her opened, and an older woman, her mother, appeared. "Lily, get inside." Then she turned to Ethan. "Go back to your world, son. You people like to play with hearts like ours." Ethan met her eyes steady and calm. "Ma'am, I mean it. I want to marry your daughter." The words hit like thunder. Lily gasped. Her mother laughed bitterly. "You'll forget this tomorrow. Rich boys always do." Ethan's voice didn't shake. "Then I'll prove it. Tomorrow morning I'll be at the church in Cedar Hill. If Lily shows up, I'll make her my wife." The night grew colder as Lily's mother dragged her inside. Ethan stayed under that same tree till dawn, sleepless but determined. Somewhere beyond those clouds, he knew life was about to change forever. If you were in Lily's place, would you believe a man like Ethan meant what he said? The morning sun rose weakly over Cedar Hill, turning the mist above the trees into gold. Ethan stood on the steps of the small wooden church, his hands trembling slightly as he waited. Villagers had gathered at a distance, whispering about the rich stranger who had spent the night under a tree, refusing to leave. His truck was parked nearby, coated with dew. The old priest looked at him curiously, perhaps wondering whether this was a dream that would fade with the daylight. Ethan's heart pounded harder with every sound that came from the dirt road. Then at last he saw her. Lily walked slowly toward the church, her dress simple but clean, her hair tied neatly, her mother walking a few steps behind her. The entire village seemed to hold its breath. When their eyes met, Ethan smiled, not the smile of a man who'd won something, but of someone who'd finally found what he'd been searching for all along. "You really came," he whispered when she stopped in front of him. Lily nodded, her voice soft. "My mother said, sometimes you have to trust the good in people, even when life hasn't given you many reasons to." The priest began the ceremony quietly. There were no guests in fancy clothes, no orchestra, no photographers. Just the two of them, hands trembling as they made their vows while the morning light poured through the church window like a blessing. When Ethan placed the small ring on her finger, his own eyes glistened. For the first time in years, he felt something that money had never given him: peace. After the ceremony, Ethan insisted on visiting her home again. He brought food, clothes, and some medicine for her father. He even helped repair part of the roof that had been leaking through the night's rain. Lily watched silently as he worked, wondering if this was real or just another story that would end in heartbreak. Her mother still doubted everything, but didn't stop him. Later that afternoon, Ethan placed his jacket around Lily's shoulders and said softly, "Come with me. Let me take you home." She hesitated. "That shack is my home." "I meant mine," he said, "where I'll build us a life that doesn't begin with hunger or fear." The moment felt unreal, but Lily didn't resist when he helped her onto his motorcycle. The wind tangled her hair as they rode away from the village, leaving behind the fields and the whispers of disbelief. She looked back only once to see her mother standing by the old fence, tears shining in her eyes, not from sorrow, but something close to hope. They arrived in Portland that evening. Instead of taking her to his family mansion, Ethan rented a small apartment in the city's old district where nobody knew who he was. He wanted to start their life from zero. He didn't want his father's shadow over their love. There they cooked together in a tiny kitchen, laughed over burnt toast, and slept side by side on a mattress on the floor. It wasn't luxury, but it was theirs. Days turned into weeks. Ethan started working anonymously at one of his father's construction sites as a supervisor. No one there knew he was the owner's son. Every evening he'd return to Lily, who would wait by the window, her hands smelling faintly of soap and fresh bread. She had begun taking small sewing jobs from neighbors determined to earn her place in the world, rather than live off Ethan's generosity. But life has a way of testing promises. One Saturday afternoon, while they were shopping for groceries, a family friend of Ethan's father spotted them. The man, startled to see the billionaire's son in worn jeans, holding a poor woman's hand, immediately made a call. That evening, Ethan's phone rang. His father's voice was calm but sharp. "Ethan, who's the woman you've been seen with? Don't tell me you're wasting your time with someone beneath your world." Ethan's chest tightened. "Dad, she's a friend. We met through college. She's helping me with a project." It was a lie that burned his tongue, but he wasn't ready to reveal the truth, not yet. He knew his father's obsession with status, how quickly he judged anyone who didn't fit his definition of success. For a while, things stayed quiet. Lily remained unaware of what had happened, her days filled with ordinary joys, tending to plants by the window, humming while cooking, and waiting for Ethan to come home. Yet she noticed something had changed in him. Sometimes when she asked about his parents, he would turn away pretending to be busy. "Ethan," she said one night, "I want to meet them. They gave you everything. Don't you think they deserve to know about me?" He looked at her, torn between fear and love. "Not yet, Lily. They wouldn't understand." She frowned softly. "You always say that, but how can they ever understand if you don't give them a chance?" He didn't answer. In truth, he was terrified. Terrified that his father would insult her, that her heart would break, and that the fragile world they'd built would collapse. But Lily's innocence was stronger than his fear. A few days later, while Ethan was at work, she wrote a small note and left it on the table. "If love is real, it doesn't hide. I'm going to meet them myself." When Ethan returned home and found the note, his blood ran cold. He rushed to his car, drove as fast as he could toward Lakeview Mansion, the home he hadn't entered since their wedding. The heavy iron gates were open, and through the windows he saw Lily standing in the living room, talking to his mother, who looked both shocked and fascinated. His father stood in silence, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. Ethan stepped inside, his voice breaking. "Lily, you shouldn't have come alone." But she turned and smiled at him. "It's okay. Your mother has been kind." Robert Miller, Ethan's father, finally spoke. "So this is the woman you've been hiding?" Lily lowered her head, her voice trembling but sincere. "Yes, sir. I'm Lily Brooks. I know I don't belong in your world, but I love your son with all I have." There was a long pause, long enough for Ethan to fear the worst. Then his mother, Margaret, took Lily's hands gently. "My dear, sit down. You remind me of someone I used to be before wealth changed everything." Robert turned away without a word and left the room, the sound of his shoes echoing down the hall. That night, the mansion felt like two worlds colliding, one of marble floors and chandeliers, and another built on love, fragile but real. Ethan knew this was only the beginning of the storm that was about to test them both. If you were in Ethan's shoes, would you have told your family the truth sooner, or kept your love a secret like he did? The silence in the grand living room felt heavier than the marble around them. Lily sat quietly, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her scarf. Ethan stood beside her, his father pacing near the window. The ticking of the antique clock was the only sound that dared to exist between them. Finally, Robert Miller turned, his voice cold but steady. "Ethan, do you even realize what you've done? You've married a stranger, a beggar, without thinking about this family's name, our reputation, or your future?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Dad, I didn't marry a beggar. I married a woman who worked harder for love and dignity than anyone I've ever met." His mother looked from one to the other, her heart caught between reason and affection. "Robert, maybe you should hear them out." "Enough, Margaret," his father said sharply. "We gave him everything, and he throws it away for some fantasy." Lily rose from her seat, trembling but brave. "Sir, I understand your anger. I know I'm not what you wanted for your son, but I didn't take him from you, he came to me. I tried to send him away, but he refused to leave. I don't want his money, I just want the right to love him." Robert's jaw tightened. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he said quietly, "You both may stay here tonight, but tomorrow morning we'll talk again." The night felt endless. Lily stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, praying silently that God would soften the heart of the man sleeping in the next room. Ethan lay beside her, whispering, "No matter what he says, I won't let him separate us." She nodded, though fear still clung to her chest. At dawn, something unexpected happened. When Robert came downstairs, he found his wife Margaret serving breakfast and Lily helping her. The girl who came from nothing was now moving gracefully in his home, offering coffee, serving eggs, treating them like her own parents. She never acted small, never demanded attention. Her quiet kindness filled the room with warmth that the mansion hadn't known in years. Over the next few days, things began to shift. Lily cooked for the family, tended the garden, even mended a torn sleeve on Robert's old jacket. He said nothing, but he didn't stop her either. Every night he found himself watching her, wondering how someone who had faced such hardship could still smile like that. One afternoon, as rain lashed against the windows, Robert called Ethan into his study. The air was heavy, but his voice was calm. "Tell me the truth, son. How did you meet her?" Ethan took a deep breath and told everything from the train to the $10,000 moment, from following her to her village, to the morning he married her in a small church. Robert listened without interruption. When Ethan finished, his father stayed silent for a long time. Then he said, "You broke every rule I taught you, but maybe you remembered one thing I forgot to teach you, what it means to feel." Later that evening, Robert asked Lily to join them. She walked in shyly, unsure what to expect. He looked at her for a long moment and said, "You've done more for this house in a week than most people do in years. You've given it peace again. I was wrong about you." Tears filled Lily's eyes as Robert continued. "I once believed money could buy everything, respect, loyalty, even love. But watching you, I realized I've never seen true strength until now. You didn't come here to take, you came to give." Ethan's heart swelled with pride and relief as his father finally stood, walked toward Lily, and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Welcome to the family, daughter." Margaret wiped her eyes and hugged Lily. "I told him he'd see it one day," she whispered. A week later, Robert surprised them all. He told Ethan to prepare for a trip. "We're going to Maplewood," he said. "I want to meet the people who raised a girl like her." They drove out early in the morning, following the same roads Ethan once walked alone. When they reached Lily's village, her family was waiting outside the same old shack. Her mother, Clara, gasped at the sight of the luxury car and tried to hide behind the fence. Her father, Henry, weak but smiling, sat on his old chair near the door. Robert stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Sir," he said to Henry, "your daughter changed my son's life. From today, consider us one family." Clara began to cry. "We're poor people, sir. We never expected anything from your world." Robert shook his head. "You gave me something money couldn't, faith in goodness again." Over the following days, Robert arranged for their old shack to be rebuilt into a proper house. He hired local workers, gave Henry a small shop to manage, and promised to help Lily's younger siblings attend school. The village buzzed with awe. No one could believe that the same man who once measured worth in millions was now lifting a poor family with his own hands. When they returned to Portland, the Miller mansion no longer felt cold or distant. Laughter returned to the dining room, and the servants whispered that it was Lily who had changed everything. Even Ethan's friends, who once mocked him for marrying a poor girl, now came to visit, humbled by what they saw, a love that didn't need glitter to shine. Months later, as spring painted the garden with color, Ethan found Lily sitting on the porch, sewing a new dress for his mother. He sat beside her, took her hand, and said, "Do you ever think about that day on the train?" She smiled. "Every day. If you hadn't given me those $20, we would have been strangers forever." He laughed softly. "No, I think we would have met anyway. You were meant to find me, just like I was meant to lose everything before finding you." As the evening light fell across their faces, Robert and Margaret watched from the doorway, their hearts quiet but full. Love had rewritten their story, and the walls of their home now carried the sound of something that had been missing for too long: grace. Some nights Ethan still rode the same train, not to chase memories, but to remind himself where it all began. Each time the doors opened, he saw faces just like Lily's, tired, brave, and hopeful, and he smiled, knowing that compassion had made him wealthier than any inheritance ever could. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments what you felt while watching.